Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and our show today is the Film and Music Show. We have a very special guest backstage. Before we bring out our guest, let's welcome the star of our show. It's Dr. Madalene Chan. Welcome. Hello.
Hi, Dr. Jacalyn. Oh, it's so good to be back for the Film and Music Show. It's fabulous.
Yes, it is. How have you been?
Not too bad. I've been out in the garden today because there's a skip coming tomorrow. So to make sure that the garden is all done. So it's really nice. It's such nice being with nature. So yes.
What's a skip?
Oh, sorry. A skip is like a large metal container that people come along to deliver the skip, and then you throw the bags of compost or old furniture, and they take it away, and you just you pay for that. I mean,
like junk removal.
Yeah, junk removal.
That's what
I
we call
like
it
that.
here
I
in the
prefer
States.
that. That's a great name actually for it. Junk removal.
Dr. Chan, for people who haven't met you before, they want to understand what you do and how they can work with you. You are an incredible vocal coach. I've been working with you for a while. You are an author. You are someone who's been on the charts, on the Billboard charts, and you just find this way of using the child inside you to inspire all of us. Tell us a little bit more, and then we'll bring out our guest.
Well, first and foremost, Dr. Jacalyn, I've always followed my creative heart. I've never really worked for a company, a big corporate company or anything like that. That's why I've always been in between jobs, and that's allowed me to have the time and space to evolve my creative heart. And I love helping people to awaken to their highest potential through their creative heart. With their art, with their creative, whatever they like to do, to awaken their voice and become stronger, which will have a positive effect in their life. And that's what I like to do.
Fantastic. Can you tell our audience about our guest?
Yes, of course. Oh, my goodness. Well, the next guest, his name is, our guest today on the show is Daniel Dargue. And Daniel, he actually does a trades that's considered, how can we say, using a lot of his hands and very manly. But what's wonderful about him, he combines that with his feminine energies, and he remains himself. He doesn't copy anyone. He's not frightened. He has no fear of expressing who he is. And he makes that known. And that's what's lovely about him. He's really, and he's here he's in the studio. So let's bring him through. Daniel Dargue.
Welcome to the show, Daniel. Nice to have you.
Nice to be here. Really, I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Daniel, you have a huge following on Twitter, which I think is, I've never done well on Twitter at all. What is it you want people to know about you, and why are so many people following you?
Well, I've always said I reckon the main reason why I think a lot of the popularity came from was this main word that I like to use, this word that I repeat countless times, and it's juxtaposition. I think it's a very powerful thing. The combination, the contrast between that kind of manly, the very manly trade of blacksmithing, that of course it's just overall stereotypes in all fashions of media is becoming it is really strong and manly as possible, when really I believe there can actually be quite a lot of interchangeable, more feminine traits involved with blacksmithing as well, which I've encountered all throughout my career of being a blacksmith. I've been a blacksmith for 6 years now, so I've encountered a lot of people, and I feel my story reflects a lot of people out there who are trying to be more feminine in potentially male trades. So when people see me actually proving those thoughts real, into tuition, they want to see more, so they click follow. So I genuinely, I think that's the main reason why I think I attract so many people. It's mostly juxtaposition.
Thank you so much for sharing that. For people who don't know, can you give us a little bit of background? What does a blacksmith actually do?
Yes, of course, yeah, and hell, that's something as well that's extremely filled with misconception and its own its own uphill stream to try to fight against. And yeah, blacksmithing, the best way I can describe it is it's a very, very widespread trade in terms of metalwork, usually deriving from old 4,000-year-old techniques from all the way up from the Bronze and Iron Age. And I like to replicate. I'm what's known as a technical blacksmith. So there are three main types of blacksmithing, and a lot of people might know the one of them, which is called farriery, to be a farrier, which is to make horseshoes. So a lot of people understand, and that's the case. But we can make absolutely anything that you can see that's out of metal, from gates to sculptures, fences, and just even jewelry. There are such a widespread in terms of if it's made of metal, we can most likely make it, and we'll make it by hand, and we'll make it with all of the resources we can, of the human body, a lot more than, for example, big machines and big factories making these mass-produced products. We just like to put quality over quantity. So blacksmithing is something hard to put into just a small group. It's just a massive, varied trade, just like woodworking. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Thanks so much for that. It sounds like you're a creative artist.
Yes, I mean, I there is definitely art in all fashions of blacksmithing, in my opinion, and there are different variations of it. But I see myself as an artist. Definitely, I see a lot of my friends and peers as artists, even though some of them don't usually want to admit that. Strangely, and in every capacity, even though we'll sit and design something that's quite functional, sometimes that function comes with so much form alongside the function that, of course, I can think it's an artistic thing. It's of course. I will show you some pieces later, and it will just prove to you that it's an art form, no matter what you're making. So yeah, I would agree.
Fantastic. Thank you. I've got some more questions, but I'm going to go over to Dr. Chan so I don't hog all the show.
I'm just shocked. I'm absolutely shocked, because Daniel is my brother's boy. They're the family, and so I knew Daniel when he was younger, and I didn't know that he was into being a blacksmith. I mean, a blacksmith is considered, how can I say, a lot of kids and kids your age type of thing are at college doing, digital, doing the techie world.
Yeah.
What is the demand for, how can I say it, people at your age, your generation, in the line of work that you do? What is it in demand? I'm confused.
Well, it certainly is in a lot more demand now than it used to be. Back when back when you used to know me as a kid, it was a lot less a lot less likely for the youth to get into blacksmithing. I found in the last 5 years alone, the trade has exponentially grown in interest for a whole load of different variation of groups, and including the youth. Things like YouTube channels, big YouTube videos about how to make knives and how to make sculptures and gates. And actually, the community of blacksmithing, even though they were slightly aged, could reach to the youth quite easily through the internet. So I certainly think the internet has increased the amount of demand that there is. But I've always loved making things, so I suppose I've always had an interest in making things and actually using my hands. I've always been a more practical learner, for instance. So I think anyone who has an interest in making things can go into blacksmithing, and they'll find something they want to do. So when it's just educated to the youth that it is a possibility, it is an actual option for them, even an education standard, you can even do degrees in blacksmithing, which is most people don't even know exist. But when they do know, it almost always accommodates a whole load of different people, and including me. I happen to be very well accommodated by the blacksmithing industry, so I'm just happy I discovered it when I did. I discovered it when I was 17, actually, near the end of high school, because they had a metalwork class there, and a lot of the skills were quite transferable on, and I just really wanted. I made a ring. In fact, I'm actually wearing it right now. That ring I wear around my neck is actually the very first thing that I ever made, that I said, okay, I'm going to do this as a career. I'm going to do this because I got so much satisfaction from that. I just wanted to make my whole life dedicated to it. I didn't care what it took. I didn't care what I had to sacrifice. I wanted for that to be my job. So that's just why I wear it close, as a reminder of how far I've come as well. And I think every person has a little bit of that in them. So yeah.
Thank you for answering that, Danielle.
Yeah,
great answer. Great
Excellent.
answer.
Danielle, a question I have is, you mentioned, I believe in the beginning, we're talking about blacksmithing, which traditionally years ago, air quotes, people would think was a masculine industry, and you're bringing the feminine side of yourself to that. How have you been received in doing so?
Well, in terms of reception, it's obviously been very mixed. I have had tens of thousands approach me and claim it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing feat of seeing that, like I mentioned before, juxtaposition. Sometimes it's just people just find it funny. Sometimes it's just comedy. There's like a comedic aspect to it too, that people go, oh, that's hilarious. Look, it's someone who's dressing up femininely and doing blacksmithing. It goes against what people believe is is in the real world. So, I'm providing entertainment on one side, but there is another side for sure. Bad reception. I do get it. I get it all the time. Every day I'll have someone, commenting how I shouldn't be doing the things I'm doing. In fact, I've had many people rant entire paragraphs about me, about how I'm harming the industry, because there are people who want to keep the trade masculine. And some people most of the time, they use claims such as my ancestors would be not proud of me. A lot of them use those types of claims, saying that the old blacksmiths would despise such things. But I think, from doing blacksmithing, which is something that the actual trait that they don't have, actually being a blacksmith, there's so many varied things in the trade that you can do anything to your heart's content, and you don't have to use brute strength, which is something that's very deemed a masculine thing. In media, in movies and TV shows, you're gonna see blacksmithing with big, thumping hammer and anvil, usually shirtless men with aprons on. That's what it is. It's got this connotation, those connotations, but it's not, in reality, it's not that. In fact, I coincidentally happened to go between almost every single female blacksmith teacher in the UK. I didn't realize that was actually a coincidence. I just thought, hey, there's actually a lot more women in the industry than I realized, but actually it certainly is male dominated. But there are a lot of people who want it to stay that way for reasons that I still haven't quite decided, determined yet. So yeah, that's the reception.
Thank you for being so transparent with us.
Yeah, I find that amazing. Absolutely. A really brave step to do in a male, like you said, a male world.
Yeah. Yeah, there has been challenges. I've even been approached in person, and there's been moments where I've in fact, yeah, there was one moment in my college where I actually genuinely felt unsafe because there was a group of students who saw that as a way to target me. Of course, that situation was sorted out, and I found it's definitely in the minority. People who are in the negative and who are actually willing to approach me as well with that level of confidence because of their prejudice and issues. Uh, they're in the minority. Most people that I've met support me, and it happens to be some of the most buff, masculine men you can possibly think of in your head as being a blacksmith. They're usually the ones who support me more. So, and I know it's genuine because I've made very good friends with them, and we're close friends and probably will be for decades because of how closed our industry is in our community. So, yeah, I you can definitely tell the ones who are being genuine, and I feel it's the majority. So at least I move forward always knowing I'm going to have support. So that's what keeps me going. I know there's going to be people who are okay with me. So
I love the viewpoint that you're taking. There's your perspective. I really admire that.
Yeah.
mm-hmm. It's optimism, really. I try to be as optimistic as possible, and I could have given up many years ago in terms of blacksmithing, being approached by people who say I'm not good enough. But in the last couple of years, when I started to implement the feminine traits onto blacksmithing, yeah, from day one. In fact, actually, the first day I ever posted on my Twitter, I got 500 followers instantly. There was already a ton of people. I got really lucky with the algorithm, and I just I did not expect that level of positivity, that influx that I got, and the reaction that spread across the internet as well. My image was being spread across the internet for good and bad reasons, of course. But I felt so much optimism towards it because of how many people were loving it. So that aren't just going to jump to their prejudice. So that's what's kept me going, and it will remain that way, I'm guessing, for a long time.
Thank you. We were talking a little bit backstage about fishnets,
Yes.
and tell us, you were talking about how, and I think in fashion everything comes and goes. We see it come back around after a while. But you love fishnet. You look great in it. Tell us a little bit more.
Well, yes. I love fishnets. I love wearing fishnets all the time. In fact, even when I'm wearing more masculine clothing, I'll probably wear fishnets in between so you can sort of see them. And I was mentioning before that fishnets are one of those kind of objects in clothing that can massively change, very, very radically change from being masculine and feminine, depending what decade you're in. It seems to change almost every decade if it's more of a masculine or feminine thing. Right now, it's considered a feminine thing, but I use those kind of arguments in favor of me because some people believe that, oh, the things I'm wearing are very hyper feminine, for me to turn around and say, well, technically no, because you could, if I just waited 10 years, no doubt you'd change your mind. So what's the point in dictating ourselves so strictly right now? Everyone's living in the moment in terms of fashion. And that's just natural. That's just what happens. That's the reason why it is fashion. It's the fashion of the period. But that can change so radically. People don't quite understand just how much. 200 years ago, skirts were, well, more like 300. But yeah, 300 years ago, skirts and big puffy trousers were really masculine. And you'd look at that back now and we see that as almost silly and very hyper flamboyant, therefore feminine. Back then it was considered peak masculinity. So it's silly to box ourselves in these little boxes. If you want to wear something, wear it, because no doubt 10 years it might change in your favor anyway.
Yeah, that's very true. Be yourself. Yeah, I appreciate that. We had also talked before the show began about how people can judge us. They judge us based on what we're wearing, what they think of us. They don't even know us. And I know the three of us here are really very much about leading our lives with our hearts and giving people a chance and judging someone and how they treat us and how we treat them. What are your thoughts about this, Daniel?
Yeah, no, it's really, really important. I think sorry, I got a bit of a one of those moments.
Brain
There's so
fog.
much. There's so much to think about. It's almost overwhelming because it's so many different people with so many different opinions, and yeah, I think it's always it. It comes back to that very basic depiction of, if you want to wear something, do it. Just be yourself. There are many, many people who are currently trapped, I think, and even if they don't want to admit it, they are genuinely trapped in their own little social constructs, sometimes very local social constructs that they don't even understand necessarily. They just being brainwashed into thinking that's what they want because it's what society expects of them. And this is something this is an argument that can be used for so many different things, not just fashion. It can be anything with any perception of gender. And yeah, there are many people I think could certainly benefit from being more open-minded in terms of in terms of looking at things not as strictly boxed and strictly gendered. Sorry if that was a vague answer, but
No, that's okay. That's okay.
I was going to say, remember in the 80s, they had the New Romantics, and it was pop stars, and they were all wearing effeminate, fishnets and adamant. And all these big artists, they wore makeup, they wore cropped tops and everything.
Yes.
So it's not something new, but people have forgotten. Yeah. They've forgotten because how crazy this world is. They're moving on and they're forgetting, actually, I kind of dressed like that a long, long time ago. Yeah. Yet they've got their judging hat on.
Yeah.
They've got the judging hat, and it's where we're all conflicting.
There are people who have probably looked at me with such hatred and prejudice for wearing a crop top. Meanwhile, they probably did wear a crop top back in the 70s, or it's filled with hypocrisy most of the time. The only bad thing that I'm doing is doing it too early or too late. No one can seem to decide. We should all just stick to our little boxes and shut up and let society deal with it. Tell us what to do. But I don't see the point. I think expression. I was thinking about this thought before, and I think this might resonate with a lot of people, especially when I put into perspective via probability is something I like to talk about. The probability of your existence is so minute. Like, it's very, very small chance that you're even here to begin with. That's how I view life. And so you have this but beliefs on the side, I mean, you have this rare chance to be yourself, to be an individual, because there's so many of us, there's so many human beings, all with their incredible chance to even exist in the first place. Why not just do things the way you want to do them, and the amount of variety that can exist, because there is tons of variety. Think about how much the variety is already in every conceivable part: personality, interests, people who nerd over certain topics. I'm a massive astronomy nerd myself. These basic interests divide us, but in the good way. It gives variety, and it allows us to interact well with other groups and meet new friends and start whole families. So what if I'm doing that with fashion? Why is fashion not allowed to be expressed in the same way as some of your other more basic interests that other people take for granted? It's I think all you're doing is just adding variety to the world, and I don't see that as an issue. I don't. Some people really do. They see it as a serious threat to their existence, but I believe it's the opposite. I believe it gives them more freedom, absolutely, to do anything they want. So.
Well, yeah, I think that there's a lot of fear in the world, and people see someone who doesn't look like them and they're afraid, and then it becomes a whole, we know what it becomes.
The fear of the unknown.
Yeah, exactly. We've got a comment from our friend Gaffa, who's joining us from Ghana. Yes, Dr. Jacalyn, many people judge a book by a cover. Such do humans judge others too. Judging at first sight is truly bad. Thanks for being here, Gaffa. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Gaffer.
Daniel, I noticed you have a sword there in the corner.
Oh,
Can
yes.
you tell us about this?
This is one that I just made the other day. This is one of my commissions. It was a kind of a rapier style side sword kind of design. It doesn't have any finger ring guards or anything. It's very simplistic, but it was only a lower budget design. And yeah, this is just my most recent blade. It's very light. It's only 490 grams, and it's only about a meter long, so it's super light. But yeah, this is an example of what the pieces I can do. I do custom commissions from my Twitter message board. Most likely that's how people contact me, and they just ask for things to be made. And this is an example of something. They give me a rough idea. In fact, this actually had the classification of, hey, I would like a sword that was quite easily wieldable by someone who's smaller. And so, yeah, someone said they're quite a feminine, small person. So they would, they would like to have a sword to represent that. And I was like, okay, and I made this sword, and they are very happy with it. So I need to send that off to them at some point. But that's an example of what I can do.
Oh, thanks for sharing that with us. Now, without saying who the person is something like that used for fencing or for movies, or any idea?
Well, this could be used for not for fencing, but this could be used for cutting, because it is actually made of a higher carbon steel. It is hardened and tempered, so this thing could function as a real functional sword. So it's more of a weapon than anything else. However, it's up to them what they want to do with it. Most people who order those kind of things just order it for the sake of having one. They'll probably chop bits of fruit in their back garden, that kind of thing. That's probably what they're going to do with it. And it will be able to hold up. It's not just a wall hanger, but it also looks good. So I have had pieces that get sent out, and the person comes back to me saying, oh yeah, I'm just hanging it on my wall. That's all they want to do with it. And some people will just pay the extra anyway for the sake of being a real sword, just so it ticks the box saying that it's real, so they can show off to their friends, and not have any real use for it. And this accounts for any piece that I'm asked for. It's most. I'm not really. I do make some, obviously, evaluation in terms of, like, if someone came to me quite unstably, quite unstable, asking for a blade, I would then obviously take my I'll use something against them. I'd be like, I don't think I want to, or am I comfortable making you a sword. I've done that a couple of times. I've also had people ask me about firearms and stuff, which I've always rejected. Of course, it's illegal and I can't do that. Even if it wasn't illegal, I wouldn't make that. So yeah, it's not really my business what people do with my pieces, but most of the time I'm guessing it'd be just decorative, to show off to their friends, hey, I have a real sword made by Femboy Blacksmithing. In fact, that's actually why a lot of my pieces are sold by. It's usually because it's made by me is the big seller, which is something I'm extremely fortunate to have. Most blacksmiths do not have any of that to begin with. It takes them years to get to that level. So I'm extremely privileged in a position where I can just make anything and it would get sold because someone just wants my work, even if it isn't on the equal quality to someone else in the trade. So yeah.
Good for you. How exciting is that? That's fabulous.
Yeah. I was going to ask a question. Do people come to you and say, I've always admired this sword. This sword is in this picture. Can you replicate that?
Yes.
Like Excalibur. The sword Excalibur.
Yeah, more times than any other. That is definitely the most common type of commission. I just got one yesterday. It was someone wanted a massive trident, and it was from some anime. And it was this big, like, fantasy like trident thing. And I was like, I wasn't sure if I could make it, but they've given me, they're going to give me around $2,000 to make it, so I will, because that will cover the budget. And it's all about budget, because most people come to me saying, hey, can I have this made? And I go, okay, sure. What's your budget? The reason why I ask that is because I need to know how much of a quality I can do, even if I can reach the level of quality at a minimum. If they can't, I'll just say no. So some people will ask me, hey, could you make this sword from a TV show? Which most of the time it's already an existing sword. This sword, for instance, wasn't an existing piece. They just asked for a rough type of design sword. So genuinely, that's more likely to be made by me. But exact replicas, I'm not quite set up to do. But there's, that will be the most common thing. But if with enough money paid, I will do it. It's just some people come to me, which is a big issue. They'll come to me with a sword idea. They've thought about every single thing in the project, and accept the money. They've come back to me and said, okay, my budget is $95. And I go, oh, okay. We were looking at around $900, $1,000. That's kind of the range. You were describing your own piece. That's how those commissions work. That is the majority of the time, I'm afraid. But it's something that us blacksmiths have to deal with all the time. Our work is very expensive. It's very high quality. That's what you get. That's what you pay for. Some people look at more machine-made things and just immediately compare the two. There is no comparison. It blows it completely out the water. The machine things have their own uses and they have their place in the world. But if you want something that's cheap, don't go to a blacksmith. Most people just don't know that. So sorry.
No, they're good points. How can people find out what it is that you can create for them? Is there some place they can go and look at your work?
Well, usually they'll ask me that question individually, and then I'll just post them a portfolio. I do need to get myself some actual physical portfolio, which I'll have an actual physical portfolio, but I haven't got one online yet. Because on Twitter you can't really make those types of things. It's usually just one-time posts. And every time someone asks for an example of my work, I've got loads of variety. It's just, I don't really have an individual place yet, and it certainly is an idea. I'm now 6 years in, and I reckon the last 3 years I've made some amazing pieces to show off. I just don't really have anywhere to do so. So in fact, I've got some physical pieces here to show if you want later on.
We
So
to see them. We've only got 8 minutes left in the
Yeah,
show.
let's see.
Oh, well, yeah. So here's one of my pieces, for instance. This is an example of what I can make.
Beautiful.
This is entirely decorative, as you can see. It could be maybe on top of a gate post, maybe some, you could have multiple of these running down the side of some panel, or just one of them to sit in a cabinet as a sculpture. It has no purpose, this thing, but it's to show what I can make. In fact, this essentially is a portfolio in one piece. You've got 3 different types of scrolls here, and you've got this steel leaf design, which is all fully traditionally made, hand forged. No machines were used at all. This is 100% made by my 2 hands. So
how long did that take you to make?
Oh, this was massively exaggerated because this, in terms of time, because it was an assignment that I had to do, and I was doing other assignments at the same time. But I reckon I could make this in, about a day. I reckon about a day. So that's about a day's work right there. So like a full day, and that's I would say 12 hours of that.
Oh my gosh, it is. I was just thinking, Dr. Jacalyn, your logo for Dr. Jacalyn. Can you imagine it being in iron?
Yes. Amazing. Amazing.
I can see that. I can see an ad as well. Daniel.
We do have a comment. Sorry, one of our viewers writes, "Oh no, I missed part of the interview." Okay. That's all right. We will be replaying the interview tonight and also tomorrow morning, and you can go to our YouTube channel, USA Global TV and Radio. Daniel, what else do you have there?
Well, this is there might be some context involved in this. Essentially, I actually won a competition this year. Actually, I made a design competition, and it's for the local skate park that I live in a city, and they're making a new skate park where they're making it much bigger, much grander. And every single year they go to the blacksmiths of the college, and they basically do a little competition to see who could design the best piece to go in their skate park as like a sculpture. I designed a piece that's all about gender like dysphoria, and so it's actually quite related to a lot of the topics I that you see on like Twitter. The whole combination of LGBT and blacksmithing. It's quite a popular discussion actually, and it's a giant mirror design that basically isn't a real mirror. It just displays 2 figurines on each side of the statue. Depending on what side you stand on it, you'll see a different either male or feminine reflection. So, and all down the side of it, you have scroll work and fancy decorative thing. And this is a sample piece of what it's going to look like down the edges. So this is what you call a beveled scroll, and just a really widespread scroll. It looks really good from the front. And this thing is the thing I'm proud of, though. This is my very special prototype of a bolt. So this is actually a type of bolt / screw. It can be both. And as you can see, it's got a little heart as the head of the bolt. So it's not just a typical just round rivet that you'll see on the side of metalwork. That's holding it in place. That'll then be pinning the scrolls to the frame. So I just thought, that's a good example of how you can take form over function, but a combination of two. Nothing has to look, just because it's functional doesn't mean it has to look boring. You can make a serious amount of detail and just character to your work. And I just like the idea of little hearts. There's going to be 24 of these in total. So I've got a lot of work ahead of me. So yeah, that's an example.
Can you share with that one, what is the application for the hearts?
Oh, yeah, essentially there's going to be a frame that's attached, that are attaching these scrolls. So imagine my arm's the frame. These are going to be attached, and these bolts are the things that bolt it into the back. And so you would usually just buy a screw. You would just buy a big screw or a big bolt that just looks like it's been machined, I'm sure you can find an example when you're walking around outside, I'm sure you'll see loads of little examples of nuts and bolts and screws. But this is my design of one, where if that's the difference between a machine-made thing and a handmade thing. You've got a lot of character there. It does the same function as a bolt by bolting it to the frame, but you've got really decorative heart shapes where it looks nice. And that's it. We mentioned at the beginning of the interview, it's an art piece. It's an art form. So even if I have to replace some functional things with decorative, I can do it very, very well. There's so much variety of what I can do by hand over an anvil and hammer. And I just want to say I really wish people got more into it, and I'm really glad I've gotten a lot of people into it myself. So I really advise anyone who's watching this, if you ever have an opportunity to try it, maybe a day course or something, you should try it. It's amazing. It's one of those little experiences that can completely change you, like it did me. Who knows? So yeah.
That's great, Daniel. And I know our audience is wondering, we have a global audience. First of all, where are you located, and how can people work with you? Do they have to be right in your area?
Yeah, you can probably tell from my accent. I'm from Scotland originally, but I actually live in England right now. I live pretty low end, kind of Midlands, England. So if you're anywhere in the UK, I am available there. You can contact me on the Twitter if you want to maybe visit, maybe get some kind of class sorted out, that kind of thing. However, I also ship internationally. So if you're not in the UK, if you live in America or anywhere in Europe, or even Australia, even I've sent things to Australia. I've sent things all across the world. I do ship internationally. So all it takes is just communication. I don't have a website where it has like a bunch of products, because that's not how I work. I don't make products. But I am making axes soon. I'm making 20 axes. And so that's going to be like a product line on the side. But most of the time I'm custom work. So if you want something made that's custom, you just come to me, you message me, you say what country you're in, and I'll say if I can do it or not. And under the budget, that's how that works. You can pretty much be in any country. I think the only country I cannot ship to is Saudi Arabia, for reasons of my business, the shipping company that I use. So yeah, that's the availability I have to be able to ship my work if you do want something, and they can be very simple pieces. They don't have to be complex at all. So.
Daniel, just a quick question for our audience. If people are thinking, this is really great, I want to do something, can they contact you and say, I don't know exactly what I want, but I have this much money to spend, and this is where I'd like to put it or hang it or what, and you'll come up with some ideas?
Oh, absolutely. I've done that quite a few times. Again, that's one of the kind of more common things that happen. A lot of people come to me going, oh, I don't really know what I want, but I do have about $150. In fact, that's actually the reason why I started making the axes, because most people on average have about $150 when they come to me. I've noticed that. So if I make an axe for $150, I can just sell it to you straight off the bat. Add some custom work to it, stamp your initials into it, maybe burn some cool patterns on the wood. That's the kind of thing I was going for. So yeah, my availability in terms of my work is so huge. You can ask for anything in terms of jewelry. A piece like that, for instance, like I said about the leaf piece, or a sword, it can be anything. If you need inspiration, you can look at countless examples of blacksmithing work, but also just out there in the world. Keep your eyes open. You might see something you really, really like, and you go, wow, that's amazing. I wish I knew a blacksmith who could make that. Well, I guess you do, but I guess you do know of one. So that's my recommendation. Certainly, you can come to me with any questions you want. Even people who want to start blacksmithing and do it entirely for themselves, I give free advice always, anytime. So if you want to get yourself started, even, that's something I can do too. So I'm always there to answer questions, and I love doing so.
Thank you, Daniel. Well, we have you up on Spotlight as we close out the show. For people who want to contact you, your main following is over on Twitter. Let people know what your account name is.
Yes, it's called Femboy Blacksmithing, and essentially in almost every scenario, I've kind of got an account everywhere that's under that name, but the main one that you're most likely going to get any interaction is on Twitter. So on the Twitter account, Femboy Blacksmithing. Sometimes you just have to type in Femboy and it should come up. But yeah, that's under, it's because it was under a Femboy gimmick account, which was another topic, I guess. It's just it was a classification that became popular online quite a few years ago to represent a feminine male, or at least that's what originally meant. It's changed quite a lot recently. But yeah, that's why I like to put the name Femboy and blacksmithing together to show that juxtaposition in its entirety in the name. So that's why I'm called that. But
Thank you. Just one clarification. We have here that your Twitter handle is Femboy Forge.
Yes, it's the Femboy Forge. Yeah, I always call it Femboy Blacksmithing because that's what I'm known as. But yeah, if you want to type up on the actual it's the Femboy Forge. I actually always forget that. Thanks for reminding me. That's what I am known as.
People are like searching, like, wow, I can't find him. So, all right, that's fabulous. So everybody now knows a blacksmith who is open to creating whatever it is for you for a personal or professional business, whatever it is that you're looking for. Madalene mentioned logo. That's a great idea too. So Daniel, thank you for being here with us. We'd love to have you back on our business show or any of our other shows where you feel there's a good alignment for you and your work. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed my time here and I felt extremely welcome. So I really appreciate you. Your question choice is phenomenal, by the way. It kept me talking. There was never a moment where I felt I was stuttering too hard. So that's you're a good host. So thank you very much. I have got a good experience from this. So I appreciate it for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that as well.
And you must come back, Daniel. You must come back for part 2. Because we need to talk about the vibration of the metals and all this, what it does to you, and that that would be really interesting as well.
Yes, I can I could do a full. I can talk about blacksmithing for 3 hours straight, so you've got to be careful with that, because that's what I might end up doing. So, but yes,
there's a course there.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Chan, how can people get in touch with you, and who would you like to contact you?
Yes, if people can get in contact with me, who number one would like a song, and being able to sing the song themselves, and if they want to be in contact with their inner child essence to help open their creative heart, then please contact me on madalenecarolchan at gmail.com. That's MADALENECAROLCHAN at gmail.com.
I do believe you were singing that. I love it. Very good.
I think I got that from Caroline.
Well, thank you everyone for being here. Our next show is coming up. It's The Wise Ones, and we look forward to having you back. Please go to our YouTube channel, USA Global TV and Radio, and subscribe. If you'd like to be a guest on any of our shows, guess where you can go? Our website, usaglobaltv.com/ book your session. All right, we're signing off for now. Daniel, thank you very much for being here. I really enjoyed meeting you.
Thanks
Look forward
again.
to seeing you again. And thank you, Dr. Chan. It's great seeing
Thank
you
you,
as well.
Dr. Jacalyn.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Daniel.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.